In terms of the agenda, so we've done welcome and introductions. Nice to meet you all. I'll just do a very quick piece on background social value and just go over the TOMs for those of you who perhaps haven't come across that before. Won't take very long on that. But then the meat of the discussion today is about getting the most from social value in your commissioning and procurement processes, and also a bit about contract managing social value offers, because contract management typically, certainly from my experience, is difficult in public sector, and adding social value into the mix just adds to those issues. So I'll also have a quick discussion around remedies as part of that as well. We'll do Q&A. I'm happy if you want to ask questions as we go along, or leave them to the end. It's entirely up to you. I'm happy either way, just to pick anything up, any issues you've got as we go along. So just on social value generally, what certainly, you know, social value, because we're working with over 100 public sector organisations now, and that's generally because organisations are increasing their outlook on social value, and not just going out to procurement, but looking more holistically at what other economic, social and environmental benefits they can get from procuring. And social value really acts as that umbrella term. And as you can see, there's been quite a few acts over the years. So obviously the key driver has been the Social Value Act 2012, which was enacted in January 2013. And there's been various acts in Wales and Scotland that built on that or mirrored that. And more recently, the government has also introduced its own social value model, recognising that really government hadn't got to grips with social value, and is really trying to take that forward now in central government procurements. So the Social Value Act really requires public authorities to have regard to economic, social and environmental well-being. It's actually a very, very slim act if you've ever looked at it. It's no more than 8 pages long, and one of those is a cover. One's blank and one's sets out the content. So it's a very short act, but actually probably has had more impact as a result of not setting out what councils and other public sector authorities have to do, but rather just set out some broad guidelines as to things that ought to be looked at. And it's taken a while to get going, because the Social Value Act required social value to be considered in public procurement tenders, which gave a number of organisations an option to say, well, we've considered it, but we're not going to look at social value. And I think partly, certainly when social value was originally, the Act was originally put in place, I think lots of people did that because they didn't actually know how to get social value into procurement. Certainly more recently, and certainly in the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen a big change. What with recessions and climate change and COVID, I think most organisations now really seeking social value in their procurements to get more than just the straight procurement they're going out for, but to seek wider benefits. And as I mentioned, that in June 2020, Cabinet Officers issued Public Procurement Notice 0620, which set out that in all government procurements, social value would be sought at 10% weighting. There's also the construction playbook, which requires government organisations to require 10% weighting in construction FM contracts. And then we've got the new procurement bill, which is currently going through Parliament. And the key point about that is it probably it's expected to change meat to mat. So in other words, awarding on the basis of the most economically advantageous tender, which kind of really steers you more towards the finance and cheapest price, will be changed to mat. So you award on most advantageous tender, which will enable you to look far more in terms of other economic and social benefits that you can put into tenders. But that's a bit background about social value. In terms of the TOMS measurements, I'm sure you've come across this, but just in case you haven't, so the National TOMS Framework, or Themes, Outcomes and Measures, is a set of 48 core measures that we've developed in Social Value Portal in conjunction with the National Social Value Task Force. There's 48, those measures are the ones that represent the task force views as to the measures that are most used by public sector organisations. And that's based around 5 themes and 20 outcomes. And the benefits of having the TOMS framework is that it provides a consistent playing field for business. So particularly as we're working with 100 organisations now, they are seeing it regularly. Also, a number of public sector organisations are using the TOMS, even if they're not working with Social Value Portal. So businesses see it very regularly now. They're very used to that methodology. And it creates a level playing field because it's based on very set outcomes that they can bid against. And it was designed to embed it in social value into procurement measurement activities. So when I first started trying to seek social value, before the Social Value Act was brought about, the problem I was experiencing was that one bidder would offer you 10 apprenticeships and one job and 4 work tasters, and someone else would offer you 20 tonnes of carbon savings and 200 work placements. And it was a question of me making a judgment call as to what I thought was best, which is an open, fair and transparent in accordance with the public procurement rules. But having a measurement system that clearly got a basis for how social value is measured and organised really helps in terms of that openness, fairness and transparency, so that you can have confidence when you're doing a procurement that it's going to be something that bidders can tender on a very open basis. So it gives a practical way of creating social value for communities, and it really helps bidders think about social value they can offer and how they can offer it. What I haven't been involved in this myself, but County Durham Family has taken that national TOMS and converted it into a social value framework for County Durham Family. As you can see, there are 37 measures, core measures from that, across 17 outcomes and 5 themes. So themes being jobs growth, social, i.e. healthier, safer, more resilient communities, environment, innovation. So the innovation bit is about enabling bidders to offer something perhaps you hadn't thought of asking for. And to give you one example of that, I had from when I was in Harrow Council, we went out for a construction framework primarily aimed at local companies, and the winning bidder for that offered to buy the local school uniforms for the next year's intake at the local school, because the individual there knew that the local parents in the local community were struggling with financially because it's a deprived area. So it's a really good offer, in terms of helping parents with children. Not something, frankly, as a council we would have thought of asking for, but gave that ability for the bidder to make that sort of offer. And then just to drill that down a little bit, so if you take the jobs theme, you've got two kind of outcomes there: more local people in employment and more opportunities for disadvantaged people. And you can see there, I won't read them out, but you can see the measures that have been set out that bidders can make social value offers against. The unit is the number of people, and then the value is either the national value or will be localised to the Durham region. And those values are pulled together by a team we've got who consist of economists, etc. And they use Green Book Treasury data and Office of National Statistics information to pull those figures together, so that it's based, the figures we come up with are based on genuine societal requirements and outcomes based on that information published by the Treasury. That was just a very brief overview of measurement. If anyone wants to follow up on any of that was unclear, by all means we can do a separate call or session on that to assist with that area. But what I really want to get onto now is the procurement piece, just to say how that would work in practice. In in terms of looking at how you set out in procurement's social value and how you ask for it, what we have found in our experience, certainly for local government, is that and related public sector organisations, is that a mixture of qualitative and quantitative is best. So in other words, the quantitative is how much social value, by way of all those, adding up all the values of the measures that have been offered by a bidder, is a bidder offering, so you can add that, and that's a quantitative measure. And the qualitative bit is all about the bidder offering evidence to you about how they're going to deliver that social value, to give you confidence that they know how to deliver social value, they know who to make the contacts with, and they give you that confidence that during the contract management phase of any requirement, you will then get that social value actually delivered. So quantitative evaluation enables targets to be set. In terms of receiving bids from bidders to tenders, these need to be sense checked, because there's a number of obviously there's lots of different measures, and you need to make sure that they've put in their offer sensibly and in accordance with the evidential requirements set out for that particular measure. So say supporting evidence of delivery capability needs to be part of that requirement from bidders that they need to submit as part of their tenders. How the scoring split between qualitative and quantitative is a matter of judgment, and it can vary across different category types. So for example, if you're doing a commodities tender for stationery, say, I would put the split of quantitative to qualitative lower, because the opportunities for commodity suppliers such as stationery to offer social value is a lot less. Whereas if you're in construction, then the opportunities for them to deliver a lot more is by way of social value is quite high, and they're very used to delivery. So you might want to have the quantitative split a lot higher. And you need to emphasise to bidders that social value is all about additionality. So in other words, they can't claim for social value they're already doing as an organisation. It's about additionality for that particular procurement, and if they're awarded that contract, what they will deliver as a result of winning that contract. And that's largely to ensure that there's not duplication of social value, or a company isn't just claiming for social value that they've done elsewhere and claiming it time and time again. So it's all about additionality. And so how councils are implementing, I talked about weightings. So as part of part of quality price matrices, what we're seeing is that weightings for social value are increasing particularly across councils. So 10% is becoming a norm now. So in other words, you have quality, price, and then social value as a separate weighting. And there's two reasons for having social value as a separate weighting as part of your quality price matrix. One is to emphasise to bidders that you're taking social value seriously, therefore they need to as well by highlighting it. But the other reason is that what people used to do was include sometimes social value as part of the quality score, and the problem with that is where quality goes up and down according to the particular procurement you're doing, social value was similarly going up, so up or down. So having it as a separate line in the quality price matrix ensures that you get consistency of the percentage of social value that's being asked for in procurements. So as I said, 10% is increasingly becoming the norm now, and what we're starting to see is a number of councils moving to 15 or 20% in their weightings for social value, and we've seen a couple of examples even of 30%, not for all their procurements but for some selected procurements. And we're also now seeing private sector organisations seeking social value as part of their procurements that they're doing, whether they're working for public sector organisations or not. So just put some flesh on how this would work in procurement. So this is an example from Solihull Council, and what they're doing, replacing the tills in 70 of their schools, but in a sense it doesn't matter what the procurement was for, the principles are all the same. So the estimated contract value for this was $250,000 to $500,000. And you can see from the quality price matrix here that Solihull had quality at 40%, price at 45%, and then social value at 15%. But then critically, the social value was then sub-weighted, as I mentioned before, between qualitative and quantitative. And in this case, that was on a 50-50 basis, so 7.5% each for each of those two areas. In terms of mapping the TOMs to the themes, what we did in the same way we've done for Durham County Family, we mapped Solihull's TOMs that they wanted to use against Solihull's themes. So these themes on the left here aren't social value portals themes, these are Solihull Council's themes, and that really helps bidders to understand what the objectives of the council are and what they're trying to achieve by way of social value. But it also helps officers considerably in terms of being able to go to members or senior officers and be able to say, look at how procurement is helping to deliver the organisational objectives, because this is all the social value we've been able to generate from this procurement against these particular themes. So in terms of an example of how that works, so bidders will go on, bidders will need to submit against the TOMS measures their social value offers. They're put in how much they want to offer against any of the measures. So it's not like, generally we recommend that bidders aren't mandated to put in any particular social value, leave it totally open to the bidders to decide which social value they can offer, because that in that way they can offer social value at their best place to put across to you. And then in terms of the quantitative scoring, so if we take that example from Solihull where 15% of the price quality matrix has been set aside for social value and that's been split 50-50, in terms of the quantitative assessment, whichever bidder offers the most social value in terms of the measures times the amount they've offered will get 100% of the marks, and then all other bidders are scored in relation to that. So if bidder A offers 200k's worth of social value and bidder B offers 100k's worth of social value, then bidder A would get 100% of the quantitative social value marks and bidder B would get 50% of that. And then in terms of the qualitative assessment, so in other words, what evidence have they put forward setting out how they're going to deliver the social value they've offered, you can just use your standard qualitative assessment, which might be 0 to 10 or 0 to 100%, as in this case. This one's been kind of geared up more for social value, but most councils just use their usual quality methodology, so you've got continuity across the procurement about how quality is being assessed. This is just to show a couple of examples. So this is West Midlands Combined Authority, where they're including social value or seeking social value as part of their tenders that they do. They've put 25 tenders through social value portal worth 12.5 million, and that's created £2.5 million worth of social value. And you can see of the 264 bidders they've had to those tenders, 42% were local and 20% were VCSE organisation, and 50% of local bidders won the work. And I won't read out the stats on the social value that was generated. You can see that at the bottom there. It gives you some idea of the sort of social value they're getting and the benefits that the local communities in the West Midlands region have been achieving. And then similarly, Star, so Star, I don't know if you've come across Star, but they provide services on behalf of Rochdale, Trafford, Tameside and Stockport councils. Again, they've put 165 tenders through, generating 21 million of social value. And again, you can see the stats there, which I won't read out, but overall they're getting 27% additionality by way of social value. and that's typically what we're seeing in the social value portal, that where councils and public sector organisations have put together good social value offers using the TOMS process, etc. Generally, it's around about 25% additionality on the contract price. So it's not part of the contract price, it's additional. Those additional benefits that have been provided that go back towards, go into the local communities and offer all these benefits that you can see set out here. So before going to benefits realisation, I'll just pause there. I can't see on my screen if anyone's put any questions in a chat or anything, but if anyone wants to raise their hands or ask a question, please fire away. No? Anyone got any questions or completely confused? Okay, I'll press on if there's no questions on that area. As I mentioned, it's really, it's really important to ensure that the benefits that you thought you were going to get during procurement by way of social value are then realised during the contract management phase of any project. And as I said, generally public sector organisations do struggle a bit with contract management, so it's really important to get that area right to ensure good delivery, and that will be seen through. So what the requirement is, and what been discussing with a number of organisations, is obviously they're keen to ensure that winning bidders deliver on social value commitments made, not just to ensure that benefits envisaged are realised, but to ensure that losing bidders aren't given a reason to challenge the award outcome. So what you don't want is a losing bidder to say, well, I would have delivered the social value that I've set out in my tender, your winning bidder hasn't, and thereby getting a reason to challenge the award. So it's important that isn't given that airing or that opportunity. And there are concerns expressed that sometimes it's difficult to turn social value commitments made by winning bidders into tangible deliverables. So what I want to do is just set out some sort of principles that perhaps you might want to work to. So I think what I've seen through the work we've done is that where councils and public sector organisations set out their requirements for social value in a very cohesive and logical and sensible way, that leads to good offers from tenderers, and that leads to then good delivery. I think where there has been problems with social value deliverables has been where organisations have asked a slightly woolly or even very woolly social value questions. So I have seen quite a few times, not so much recently, but quite a few times where bidders are asked, please set out how you're going to help us deliver social value, and that doesn't really give bidders any steer as to what you're looking for, or how they might help the council or public sector organisation. Therefore, you get woolly offers back, and then inevitably they're not followed through into contract management deliverables. So I think it's really important that as part of the contract management preparation in the ITT documentation, etc., the importance that the organisation is placing on social value, and I think the weighting's a really good way of doing that. And as you can see, just went through 10 to 20% now is becoming more the norm. That really stresses to bidders that actually we as an organisation are taking social value seriously, and you need to as well in terms of what you offer back to us. Being clear what you mean by social value, e.g. by using the national TOMS, that really helps bidders understand what you're looking for, and particularly actually SMEs and VCSE organisations who may be a bit confused by what the organisation means by social value. And I've seen quite a few local bidders be unclear what social value means, not unreasonably, but when you go out with the TOMs and you've got some measures, they say, oh well, we understand what you mean by social value, and we're doing that anyway. So that really helps them with their understanding of what you're looking for. And then, as I went through that Solihull example, it ensures that social value outcomes are then clearly linked to organisational priorities, and I think that gives a clear steer to bidders that social value is important and they're doing something important in the area. I think social value is slightly different from the main contractual bit. So if for example you let a contract for facilities management for 3 buildings and the contractor clearly isn't providing a service to 1 building, you pretty much in dispute straight away. I think with social value, if you have a good change mechanism in the contract, it gives that opportunity to sit down and have a discussion with bidders to say, look, you haven't delivered on this particular social value. What are the reasons for that? And then if they've got a good reason, then you can sit down and have that discussion of, okay, what can you deliver instead? And that was particularly important during COVID because with all best will in the world, a number of contractors to authorities were unable to deliver on promises they'd made by way of social value, but by sitting down with the authority they were able then to offer different social value and ensure that the overall amount of social value that was being delivered to the organisation still went through. So it's important to have that ability in documentation to make that type of amendment. You need to be clear to bidders that their social values offers will be contractualised. They form part of the contract, and therefore, with any clauses that relate to that in the contract. And as I mentioned before, it needs to be clear social value is about additionality. So, in other words, it's not part of. They can't offer something that's part of the core contract that they've got to deliver on anyway. It's got to be genuinely additional to anything else they're doing elsewhere and anything that you've set out in the core as part of the core contract requirements. So obviously things can go wrong. I mentioned before where I think organisations set out social value in a very well structured way. I think that's really led to good delivery of social value, and I'd go as far as saying, in my experience, 99.5% of social value does get delivered. I think it's been, the problem has come where unclear offers have been made in response to unclear questions being asked. But having said all of that, it is prudent for public sector organisations to consider having some remedies available in the event that something does go wrong. So what I want to do is just focus on the sorts of things you might do to cover that off. So the first thing to think about is what the steps to take. So first of all, as I mentioned before, I think if a social value commitment hasn't been delivered, you need to sit down with the contractor and discuss why they haven't delivered on it, and there may be a genuine reason. I mentioned COVID. I've seen another council where actually they had so much construction work going on, the council actually ran out of apprenticeships or apprentices that they could put into apprenticeships. So sitting down with the contractor and getting them to offer different social value was a key to that. And if there are justifiable reasons for non-delivery, then have that conversation about what social value to the same proxy values they will deliver instead. In other words, maintaining the overall social value percentage additionality. So if they've offered 25% social value additionality, that percentage level is maintained. You're just doing it through different measures. However, if the contractor is unable to offer justifiable reasons, and remedies have been included in the contract, then you need to write to the contractor setting out the details of the breach and often providing a rectification period. And if that hasn't been, if that isn't delivered in that period, then you apply the remedies as set out in the ITT. So what remedies are available? In my experience, I think there's probably a couple that are most relevant in terms of social value. So the first one, the one that's the most, by far and away the most popular, is liquidated damages. So without not wishing to teach anyone on the call to suck eggs, but they're a fixed or determined sum agreed by the parties in advance to be payable on the breach. The key point about liquidated damages is that they need to represent a genuine pre-estimate of the costs that will be incurred by the public sector organisation to rectify the breach. So what you can't do is just use the social value proxy values to say that's how much you owe us, because the social value proxy values are fiscal values, they're not financial values. So there is a need in advance to calculate what the genuine cost to the council would be to provide the social value that the bidder hasn't. And if anyone wants some help with that, I've produced some guidance setting out how you might calculate that. And in some cases you can use the sums that the bidders have put forward. In others you do need, just particularly on employment ones, you do need to do a calculation of how much it would cost you to get to bring somebody into the organisation. The other option is to use KPIs. I think this only I wouldn't recommend using KPIs if the contract, the overall contract, hasn't got a suite of KPIs applying to it anyway, linked to service credits. I think if you've got a very large contract and you've got a KPI suite and you've got service credits that can apply for any non-delivery, then including social value, non-delivery of any social value measures as part of that makes sense. It doesn't make sense for lower value contracts, and trying to do a KPI just on social value gets a bit messy. So unless you've got a KPI suite in a large contract anyway, I would recommend using liquidated damages, and indeed that's what most councils are doing. And just occasionally you have a large contract where you could include a KPI linked to service credits. And finally, you could do retention. I've never seen it used, if I'm being honest, but it is an option, and I think that'd be used on a mega contract where you retain some of the estimated profit or social value percentage as part of the overall contract value. But as I said, that'd be sort of very much a one-off, exceptionally large contract that you might try and do something like that in. So that was it. That was a jog through the procurement and contracts. So I'll stop sharing. I'm just happy to have a Q&A session. So happy to take any questions anyone's got on any of that, or indeed anything else.